Begging can be an issue that is very annoying. Having a dog follow you around everywhere you go, trying to get food from you, stealing food from you, it can get to that point. Or having guests over, not everyone's going to love the fact that your dog is sitting there drooling at them, waiting for them to toss a bit of food over. So we want to get a handle on this problem. And this is one of the reasons why I'm so against giving treats to dogs, because initially, if you're giving a dog treats, even to introduce them to training commands, you're actually teaching them that it's okay to take food from humans. So if we never start down that road, it's one less thing we have to correct. So if you have a dog that has already been doing this and it's begging now, there are some things that you can do to correct the problem. When you have food around, just like they do in the dog world, a dog who has a bone, if he's approached by another dog who's looking to take that dog with the bone is protective over that. So we don't want to allow the dog to sit in front of us staring at us, even if we're not giving the food, because it's a silent form of aggression for them to stare at us like that. We want to discourage the dog, tell them to go away. If they're not moving away just by the fact that you're like, no, go, with a sort of a bit of a growl from you, then that's when you want to have the dog in a different place. You want to put them in a down command away from where you're eating and make them hold that. Don't give them the opportunity to sit there and hopefully nag a bit of food out of you, especially when there's children around. Even if you don't have children yourself, you're eventually at some point going to be around kids, and kids a lot of times have food in their hands. And kids are at the right height for dogs to steal from. As well, kids are submissive generally in the way they come across to the dogs, so they become an easy target for dogs to dominate and badger for their food. And we don't want to have any aggressive issues where the child is trying to stop the dog from taking the food, and if they're not sure how to do that, where the dog then turns around and nips them. We should be able to put our kids down with the dog so that they can eat their ice creams or whatever they want to do, and the dog should not be bothering them. Typically, when we sit down to have a little family picnic on the grass, my dogs have always laid about 5 or 10 feet away from us. They won't come in and pester us. They're not right next to us. They give us our space, and that's something they've done because the way we deal with them shows them that we're the leaders, the food is ours. There is no begging. It's not a habit that we have created in our dogs. So again, my kids can go out there on their own and have a little picnic, and they don't have to worry about being pestered by the dogs. You can give your dog a bone to chew on when you're having dinner, so they've got something to keep themselves focused on. Put the dog's bed near the table, away far enough that you can keep an eye on them, but give them their down command there. In the house, as I've said before, you want to have your training collar on and your training line on the dog while they're learning to behave in the way that you want them to. So if the dog is standing staring at you and you've told them no, go away, and they don't go, you also, besides putting them in a down command, you could try just standing up, taking their training collar, give it a snap, and tell them to go and point away. And they will start to get the idea when the correction level is appropriate for their personality, they'll start to realize that it's to their benefit not to hang around hovering looking for that scrap. It's also another reason why I don't give dogs scraps off the table, leftovers from my food and so forth, because it teaches the dog to respond to that scent of that type of food. So as soon as they get that smell happening in the house, they're there looking, assuming, well, they're going to be fed next. I never give dogs food off of my plate. I wouldn't even put the plate down on the floor to let them clean up that. Don't let the dog stand up and lick the dirty dishes in the dishwasher. I've seen a lot of people do that before, and they think it's a bit of a treat to allow the dog to do that. Anywhere the dog is going after our food, we want to discourage that. Food is a major issue in a dog's mind. It's the one thing that dogs will fight over consistently if they're untrained and they're dominant-minded. That as you go to correct your dog and take their training line and give it a snap back, they may turn around and become agitated with you. If we remember the scales of correction, that if your dog walks through life, say on a scale of 1 to 10, your dog perceives itself to be a 7. If you in the past have not been getting respect from your dog and you've come across very sort of softly and inconsistently, wishy-washy, and your dog has perceived you to be a 2 or a 3, as you start to then take control and increase the firmness of your corrections, you may find that your dog becomes aggressive to drive you back down into a place of submission, and especially when it's dealing with a food issue. So if you find that your dog is growling at you, threatening you, barking back at you as you start to correct them around the food, you want to immediately get your black nylon muzzle, muzzle the dog, sit down with your food, go through the exact same situation. So this way, at this time, you're going to be protected. There's not going to be any problem with you getting nipped by your own dog, and it happens a lot to owners when they're not careful. And it also causes the dog to be a little more humble, a little more submissive to you with the muzzle on. Many times I've dealt with dogs that seem stubborn in one particular area. As soon as we muzzle them, the dog complies with what we were asking them to do right away, because without their teeth available, they are not the same demanding, confident dog that they were before. So this is just a stage that we go through in the retraining to get their brain to reprogram to the way that we want it to be. It's not a long-term thing to always have your dog muzzled when you have food around. It's only a temporary tool to get the dog to change its patterns of behavior. Once we've got that change happening, then you try everything with the muzzle off. And if you have a problem, you can go back to using the muzzle for a bit and then take it off again. You're showing the dog that I'm willing to give you freedom as long as you comply with what it is that I'm asking. So don't be hesitant to use a muzzle, because it is a very powerful and effective tool in helping your dog to overcome its dominant mentality.